Christopher Pyne. Could you enlighten us what the Teals are?
The Teals are political deceivers. I think they're political frauds. They're not running in any Labor seats. They're only running against government members. They're very well organised. To call them independents is really quite false. They have one purpose, and that is to remove small L Liberal members from the party room, to make the Liberal Party more right-wing and therefore unelectable. It's a very obvious campaign.
Yeah, let's stop calling them Teals. I mean, it's just a well-heeled, nice handbag Green Party, or it's the Birkenstock Green Party, but it's still the Greens. It's the same agenda, just nicer clothes and different seats. That's what it is.
You know, they're Greens with harbour views, or they're Greens, maybe they're Browns.
And I don't want to sound like some conspiracy theorist, but I just find it fascinating that these so-called Teal independents, who actually are a political party, have been all mobilised against Liberals, focused on effectively Liberal moderates. So it has shifted resources when we should be attacking, you know, the Labor Party and others. We're trying to defend our own.
But what we've seen is an unholy alliance come together. Get Up, Extinction Rebellion, Labor Party, the Greens, all abandoning their traditional camps to back behind a journalist. And frankly, the ABC's given them a dream run as well. Added on top of that, when you aggregate everything, about $3 million worth of campaign support for one objective, to remove me from Parliament and remove Goldstein from the Liberal hands.
You've got these people who live in expensive homes, who drive European cars, and everything's air-conditioned, and suddenly they approach politics through the essence of a bumper sticker and think, oh, if I vote Teal, I'm going to save the world.
You know, the Teals were given an awful lot of free publicity every time they turned around. There's kind of been the ABC cheer squad and everybody else egging them on.
Unlike the Australian, the Herald Sun and the Daily Telegraph.
Who covered Daily? No one, because you were upsetting Princess Christina.
But no one has a platform.
We had to have the Teals.
But no one has
They say they're not a political party. They sure as hell act like one.
Well, they probably didn't have the money of a certain Mr.
$12 million.
You know, Daddy's money behind him. You know, behind the campaign.
Tim's a great member of Parliament, and it would be an absolute shame for the people of Goldstein to lose him compared to who they'll be gaining, who'll make, I'm sure, a very limited contribution on the best of her days.
Well, instead, the people of Wentworth get a Teal independent, a fake independent who will contribute as much to the country as Zali Steggall has, which is nothing.
He's my local member, and I didn't vote for him, but I gave him number 2. And I gave him number 2 against the Labor Party's how to vote, because I don't like independents. I like stable government. And I'd much rather see, if we can't have a Labor member, I'd much rather see a Liberal. I just have no time for the independents. The only thing they can lead us to is chaos.
I'll tell you what, I spoke to a guy tonight, good fella. He said, I voted 1 Nats, 2 Labor, because if you're going to run the country, I want you to run the country. I don't want this sort of selfish, self-entitled, I can be with anybody at any time of the day. How's that going to work? Imagine we all did 151 independents. What farcical rubbish this nation would descend into. It's total entitlement.
That is the worst outcome. I mean, I said to people, if you can't vote Liberal or National Party, for God's sake, vote Labor.
You know what? I just hope, for the sake of the country, that there is a majority. I think, in all honesty, I think that's a better outcome for this nation.
And I agree with Richo. Better have a majority government, whether them or us, than the utter fiasco and chaos of having a Senate, which is a fiasco, and in the reps as well.
If you want to get rid of the government, you've got to vote Labor. Don't risk a vote with a Greens or another minor party. And what I noticed was that a lot of the people, particularly younger voters, who were coming and just taking the Greens how to vote card, they weren't thinking about who was going to form government. They were wanting to make their statement about what sort of party they wanted. And for some Greens voters, I think it's a bit of an identity thing that, you know, if you're a young person in the inner city, in any of our big capital cities, you vote Green. That's just what you do. And I don't think they were necessarily thinking about the political consequences of that vote.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Part of the challenge for Labor in some of the inner city seats, and, you know, I've got to contend with the Greens in my seat too, is very affluent people tend to sometimes vote Green. Because they haven't got a worry in the world.
Because they can't work out their
It's a Lexus vote.
Their Tesla actually runs on coal at the moment.
Teslas work fine.
They work fine.
People get out expensive cars and they're voting Green. And, you know, I think they're a bunch of hypocrites.
So you say we should take more action on climate change. Well, we
didn't
did
say
sign
that.
up to
I
net
said the
zero.
Australian
We
people
did do these things.
The Australian
and we're not
people are
winning
sending
in the
you a
suburbs.
message.
We're not winning in the suburbs. We're under challenge in some seats like Dixon. We should get there, but it's very, very close. Too close for comfort. And we're still losing the inner city seats. So what more do we do?
Because every single time there has actually been an election about climate change. 2010, 2013. One side said carbon tax, the other side said no, it's going to go. Landslide territory. 16 climate change, 19 climate change. The only election where the two major parties are agreeing with each other on net zero, surprise, surprise, the coalition is backing out of town.
Well, I think exactly what Tony Abbott said last time rings true. When we make climate change an environmental issue, as we have done by signing up to net zero, we lose, including in inner city seats. When we make it an economic issue, which we did in 2010, 2013 and 2019, we win, and we also win in the inner city seats. Because once you surrender to the Greens and say, yeah, net zero is the right destination, then you're just arguing about the timing. When we legitimise the issue, because we've all rolled over on it, we surrender to them, of course people are going to vote for it. They'll vote for the authentic thing. When we actually take it on and stand on the conviction and say, look, it's not a good idea to go down this path because it's going to lead to higher energy prices, it's going to lead to a cost of living issues. We win.
I think
the evidence is clear over the last 10 years.
I followed you. I think you're a smart guy. But when you distinguish and you say climate is an environmental issue and not an economic issue, tell that to the people who've got to pay higher insurance premiums. Tell it to the fact that the rest of the world's moving to invest in new energy sources and we are being left behind.
They're coming
Climate's
back.
an economic issue.
Have you looked at the coal price lately? Have you looked
Sure.
at it?
One of the things I will say about all of that
hang in there
is
with
that
your views.
I think that
I will.
Housing affordability is the political fault line in Australia right now, and I think we've overlooked that. And the great thing about housing affordability, which I think is impacting enormously, is you can't create conservatives if they've got nothing to conserve. So if you don't have a house, own a house, you know, you've got nothing to conserve.
The Australian public have voted for a great, huge crossbench of people who will be completely, of course, powerless if Labor has a majority government.
What it may actually deliver, though, is the fact that the two major parties might just have to start working a little bit more closely together to get sensible policy, because I don't think Australians necessarily would like to see some of the policies, the hard left policies of the Greens, put into place by the Labor Party. So,
but the issue has been that our experience has not shown the willingness of the coalition to do that. I take your point on. I think that's where it should head.
I think one of the things that the Australian public probably don't know is the amount of times that legislation goes through both houses of parliament with the support of the two major parties, which renders independence and the Greens and the like completely irrelevant. But I think what my point would be is, I mean, I work in the Senate, I work